Very serious.
Perfect night, love in the air as I placed your hand into mine, and hearts beating wildly, fueled by the feelings deep inside, and I was wasting my time. He was on your mind. You had a quick change of heart, so why didn't you tell me how you felt straight from the start? 'Cause now you're not here and slowly my
Hello, Sage. This is Cody. Or how? Wait a minute. Is my name Cody or Colby? I'm not really sure. So I will, there in fact, internally. Hang on a second. God damn it. I'm trying to. Wait a minute. I think your name might be Sully. I don't fucking know what your goddamn real name is. Alright, give me a call back. Wait a minute. Sage. I'm sorry. Please don't record this.
I will not. I will not record that voicemail. Absolutely will not record that voicemail, Cody, Kobe, Cobb, whatever your name is. Okay, we are back. It is Monday. A lot has happened. A lot has happened over the weekend. It's kind of shocking. Let me move some of my stuff over here that I wanted to move over here that I forgot to move over here. Now it's moved. Now it is moved. A lot of stuff's happened over the weekend. Couple things. Maybe some important stuff. Maybe not. Maybe a big deal. Maybe not. But there's a lot of stuff going on. So I'm just going to start the party here. Hold on. Hello?
Hey,
What?
you are not Kevin Costner.
Very true. I am not Kevin Costner. This is Sage, and still the Sage Outcast show. Basically, what we're still doing here is we're still covering some news, but we're covering more logistics aspect of it, geopolitical aspect of it. We're going to be covering like things like shipping and over-dimensional type freight and how the economy's functioning or not functioning, things like that. So you can kind of better build your business in the logistics field, basically. Kind of my logistical point of views on things, because everybody kind of looks at things and basically says, how is this going to affect me? And I'm going to try to explain to you how some of this stuff is going to affect you. So today, Tuesdays, I think I'm going to cover more of supply chain type stuff, logistics type stuff, because I'll get some reports that come out today, and I can cover them tomorrow. But today, you guys hear anything about some type of invasion or something in, I think, what was it, Panama? No. Cuba? No. I think it was Venezuela. I think Venezuela, basically, we went in, and I wanted to talk a little bit about that. Kind of what my opinion is. Oh, did I set up the phones for call-in? I did. I have a view of this that is probably going to be, well, maybe not different than everybody, but different than quite a few people. Definitely different than quite a few people. So, over the weekend, the Trump administration, without Congress, basically went in and captured the president of Venezuela, right? So, technically, it is regime change that we weren't going to do regime change. That regime change usually never goes well. And even when it's for oil, like Libya, Iraq, regime change never really goes well. But, he went in there with, as a law enforcement aspect of things, they went in with the FBI, allegedly DEA probably, and the U.S. military to kind of go in and scoop up Maduro and seize him and his wife and bring him back to the United States to stand trial in New York for charges that I'll have to read the indictment. I don't have the indictment, but I thought I'm going to read the indictment. Basically, also bombed a port, and I have an idea on why they did that also. They said it was because it was the number one drug port. It's not, but I have an idea on why they did that. But basically went in there and seized the president of Venezuela, right? Now, people are, so I had a couple people call me and basically say, what do I think about this in regards to, what's going on with that and how other countries are taking it and stuff like that. And I really didn't want to make this, a Trump show, basically, at least today. I kind of wanted to explain my thought process in regards to this. Do I believe it was a good idea? I don't believe it was a great idea to do this, and there's a lot of aspects to that. But I don't believe it was a immense bad idea. The problem is that anytime we go in and we do regime change, it never really goes well. Creates kind of a power vacuum that doesn't work well for the country that it happens to. Right? There are other ways that we've kind of learned how to do things. To make it where it's not so much of a power vacuum causing, countries to crumble or turn over to, bad people, basically. Taliban, Iraq and Libya type stuff, things like that, ISIS and issues like that, terrorist organizations. So, a lot of the stuff that I believe he's doing, and I want to look at this from a logistical point of view, right? I really do. So, not really the law enforcement aspect of it as of today. But basically, here's the gist. Let's get down to it. So the problem I have with this is that although we believe a lot of people are now excited because the president that was a dictator is now gone, and they believe that there's going to be a lot of, prosperity in their future. We don't actually know that. We don't actually know who's running the country, and I'm going to cover this in some videos. We don't know what the future is going to hold. Trump thinks that there's going to be a lot of oil companies that are going to go into Venezuela. I'd like to kind of hear your opinion of this also when I turn on the phones. Do I have the phones on yet? No, because I don't. So just you guys kind of know where I stand. I don't believe oil companies are going to race into Venezuela to now start pumping Venezuela oil. And I can give explanations for that. I can give you reasons for that. One, the type of oil that they have. Two, it's going to take hundreds and billions of dollars. I mean, possibly, I don't even know, maybe trillions, but definitely hundreds of billions of dollars to repair the infrastructure, for the oil, to get oil companies down there to start pumping that oil out of the ground. So oil companies have to look at that and say, is it? And then you have an instability because remember, some of the other aspects of this is, okay, is it going to be, are we going to have security? Are they going to, is the country going to be stable enough to employ people down there to be able to get this oil out of the ground? All right. Right now, Chevron's down there. Chevron? I think it's Chevron's down there, and they do an 80-20 split. Like they get, I think 20% split with the oil company, the Venezuelan oil company that pumps oil down there. So I don't think that it's going to be oil companies are going to race down there. They have a lot of other ways that they can spend their money that are more profitable than just Venezuelan oil, if that makes sense. So I don't see that happening. I don't see a lot of oil companies. 'Cause like I said, you kind of have to look at this also from an aspect of, is there stability, right? Is it a safe place and to invest hundreds of billions of dollars to a possibility that's going to take probably, I want to say 5-6 years to upgrade their infrastructure to be able to get it, to make it profitable, maybe 10 years before it's profitable. Like I said, because you don't turn a profit on day one. Also, the type of oil that they have is a very thick oil, and I'm going to kind of show videos of that. So it needs another, basically, chemical to break it down and thin it. So are you going to be able to turn enough profit off of that, plus the stability of the government? Like, you also have a possibility of another president coming in and changing their mind. You'd have to lift all the sanctions, but you have the possibility of another president coming in, changing their mind. You have a possibility of, another president in Venezuela coming back in and saying, no, we don't want you Americans here again. And then we're going to have to do this all over again, because that's what happened with Chavez in the 1970s. So you have a lot of oil companies that are going to basically say, well, wait a minute. Why should I invest hundreds of billions of dollars in that when I have other places I can, invest hundreds of billions of dollars or other things? Because you have to understand, too, is that oil companies, they have enough money that they're not just, investing in oil, right? They have money that they are in stock markets. Oil companies were in other renewable energy companies. So it's not just oil that they invest in. So if you're going to look at this from a business aspect, if this was a business for me and I had the money to do it, I probably wouldn't invest in Venezuelan oil when there's so many other opportunities to invest my money in. I don't see a safe place to put my money, right? Because you have a lot of other possible problems, right? Are we a part of OPEC now? If we're taking over Venezuela, are we a part of OPEC? Because Venezuela is a part of OPEC. So how's that work? Is OPEC going to be are they going to have a good time with us being a part of OPEC? If we're taking it over, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. Lots of stuff going on, but I will turn the phones on here. Hang on one second here. All right, so we did have that kind of pop up. So that was one of the things that I, in regards to getting rid of dictators, I mean, I'm not going to say it's good or bad per se. Like I said, you would hope that we would have a better plan than we were going to take it over. We're now taking over Venezuela. And then Trump's now excited about taking over, I don't know, Greenland. I think Colombia's next, Cuba. And what is this all? And the thing is why? Why does he all of a sudden want to take this over? Well, I have an idea. And it's so, and this was also, and I also went back and forth in my chat. Well, I didn't really go back and forth. I went back and forth in regards to the Nick Shirley video. Some people were like, hey, he was there at some of these daycares at 4 o'clock. I'm like, no, he wasn't. He was there at 11 o'clock. You can tell by the shadows on the vehicles. Also, you can tell because he wasn't there at a daycare at 4 when sunset was at 4:30 and there's the sun is out and things like that. But I also went back and forth a little bit in regards to this also with the fact that are we now? Here's a question I have for you guys, because I'm going to bring some stuff up for some MAGA people, and I'd like for them to kind of explain this to me. So some of the stuff that we're also looking to do would be, I feel we're moving down the Pan American Highway, and we're pulling away from China to move our cheap labor down. If we can make it a stable country to manufacture in, to now manufacture in South America. I believe we're going to be moving a lot of our manufacturing down to Mexico, South America, where the labor is cheap. And I brought this up in one of my chats, or my text messages, because I basically posted that, when do we move cheap labor down to Venezuela? And people are like, no, that's not what he's going to do. Manufacturing's all coming back to the United States. And I'm like, well, oil's not. I mean, Donald Trump's basically saying that oil companies are going to move down to Venezuela to pump Venezuelan oil. So wouldn't that be losing jobs to Venezuelan oil? Because that's kind of weird, right? That's why wouldn't we pump our own oil? Now, we pump a different oil than Venezuelan oil, which I know that, but, not a lot of people know that. But if what I'm seeing in regards to the Trump administration strategy in regards to what their plan is, it's the Don Doctrine. And he's even mentioned that, which is based on the Monroe Doctrine, which was basically saying that, hey, stop interfering in our side of the planet, and we won't interfere in your side of the planet. Problem is that doesn't go well. We've actually learned that it's kind of not. Well, let's play some videos. Until we get some callers. Hang on, let me get my stuff ready here. Hang on.
When considering the most important events in world history, it is easy to immediately think of nations still used on road under their sphere.
Patreon supporters comment or by pay our
States of America.
All right.
His presidency coincided with the demise of the
Because if you don't understand what the Don Doctrine is, you have to understand what the Monroe Doctrine is. Because I don't think he understands what it is.
Napoleonic order in Europe,
Okay.
and the emergence of the concert of Europe.
And here's why, because right now, a big portion of logistics used to come from, and I used to explain this too, if you're here for the logistics aspect. No, it's not anything to hate Trump. I'm being honest here. Anyways, U.S. reserves are drying up. Yeah, but U.S. oil is different than this oil, right? It's not the same oil, right? You guys, know that, right? Like, we get sweet oil. This is like tar sand oil. This is really thick. Like, actually, let me see if I have the type of oil that we have before we cover that. All right, let's go to bookmarks. Let's do this right here. Let's pause this. Let's back this up. Let's blow this up here.
Now, Donald Trump is insisting that the main reason he's interested in Venezuela, the main reason the US is kind of looking at tankers off the coast of Venezuela comes back to drugs, the trade, the smuggling of illegal drugs out of Venezuela. But what if it's not just that? Maybe there's something else going on. What if it's partly about oil? Now, on the surface, you might be thinking, why does America even need Venezuelan oil? And I can kind of understand your point, because if you look at just total oil...
I mean, you guys know that it's going to take probably, I want to say 8 years before we can actually be rebuilding their infrastructure to pull this oil out, right? And my question to you guys would be, if there's other places you can invest in, like if you can just buy Canadian oil right now for cheap, like really cheap, it might actually cost you more to rebuild Venezuela's infrastructure and pull that out. Why wouldn't you just get the Canadian oil, right?
Production. Look, this is up until 2005. The US was there, Venezuela was there, Saudi Arabia was there. But as you probably know, since then, everything has changed. Look, American output has gone through the roof, way above Saudi Arabia, and Venezuela has gone basically to the floor. And that's kind of post-Chavez, Maduro. They're one of the minnows now, and I think 21st biggest producer in the world. So again, that question, why should America care? Well, in the US, that big rise is largely down to this. It's down to the shale revolution. So you've got fracking all around the US producing extraordinary amounts of crude oil. And here's where we get to the interesting bit. Because when you're thinking about crude oil, maybe you're just thinking about, well, look, barrels of oil. It's all the same, isn't it? Well, actually, no. So if you kind of look at crude oil, there are various different types of crude in different parts of the world. There's actually kind of various different ways you can categorize it. But one way you can look at it is look at the kind of density. So you're basically looking at how thick that crude is. And when I say thick, I mean literally how thick. This is showing you global production broken down by the density of that oil. And so you've got the kind of medium stuff. And this is probably, if you've got kind of image in your mind of what crude oil looks like, it's a bit like this, it's kind of black, but it's not too viscous, it flows around. But there's other stuff as well. So this is light crude. And it kind of almost looks like a smoothie, doesn't it? And that's the same stuff. This is still crude.
Vegan smoothie.
Oil, but down to the kind of geological and the biological conditions in the ground when it was being formed, hundreds of millions of years ago, it comes out looking a bit different. And so that's light. You've also got heavy stuff. And it's kind of relatively small in global production, but this is gloopy, super viscous stuff, heavy oil. So heavy, medium, light. Remember that. And remember also the key...
Also, sweet would be light. We call it sweet oil, it'd be light.
The key thing here is you get it out of the ground, it may look like that, but ultimately you still need it to go into, someone's car, or indeed, be turned into chemicals. Basically, you need to process it. And that processing, that happens in places like this, in refineries. And there are refineries all over the world, of course. There are refineries all over the US as well. There's kind of more than 100 of them. And if we kind of look at where those refineries are, well, so there's some in California. So the history in America, actually, historically, a lot of the early Californian oil, that was the heavy, gloopy stuff. And if you look at kind of some of the refineries in America, so here are some of the refineries. There's one in LA there. These are the 10 biggest. You've got some up here around kind of towards Canada. We'll kind of come to that in a second. But a lot of them are down there, kind of Texas, Louisiana, on the coast. And here's the critical thing. These refineries are primarily set up for heavy oil, for taking that gloopy stuff and turning it into gasoline and all of the other different products. But here's where things get interesting. And remember that chart I showed you a moment ago, the one which showed kind of shale oil and how it kind of went through the roof? The oil that's generally produced with shale oil, the fracking oil, that comes out of the ground mostly in the light form. So it's the smoothie. It's sometimes actually even...
Now, why... and I've gone back and forth with somebody that called in that thought he knew about oil and was yelling at me. So if you guys were to... and they're like, well, we don't produce our own oil. We got to go back to refining our own oil. We got to go back to refining it, and that's the best thing. But the problem is with that, oil companies, oil refineries buy the oil, okay? Now, the oil that basically is the cheapest is the heavy oil. It's the heavy oil, right? And and what you can make out of the heavy oil is the most, because light oil is already pretty much kind of too light to be used for like car oil and stuff like that, let's just say, right? Where the heavy oil can be made into gasoline if it needed to. It can be refined all the way down to gasoline. You're probably not going to use it for jet fuel, but for truck diesel and stuff like that, right? So if you were going to be an oil refinery, you're pretty much going to buy an oil that you can get the most out of. That's the cheapest, right? That makes sense.
Clear, comes out of the ground clear rather than black. And that's the majority of American production right now. Shale oil tends to be light stuff. And actually, that's kind of going back 10 years. Look at where we are now. Look at those bars. In the last few years, the amount of light oil being produced in the US has gone up and up and up, and the amount of kind of heavy stuff has gone down. But back to those refineries. They need to be fed. If America's going to have gasoline, it needs to feed those refineries with heavy oil. So if you look at the kind of imports coming into America, in recent years, even though America is producing so much oil, more oil than it ever produced before, it still needs to suck in loads of oil from overseas. And the type of oil we're talking about, it used to be, it's mostly heavy crude. It used to be only 12%. So only 12% of imports were heavy, gloopy crude. Now, it's about 70%.
And we get it mostly from Canada. So, and here's where my confusion lies. If you're going to invest hundreds of billions of dollars, why not just do it into Canada?
70% of the oil coming into America, which it needs to basically keep its economy going, is heavy crude. And where does heavy crude come from? Well, here are some of the big countries where you find most of it. It's Canada and Venezuela. There's one other I'll come to in a second, which we'll come back to. But it's Canada and it's Venezuela where you get most of this heavy crude oil, which is why, back to think about where those refineries are, they're mostly set up, you've got some in the north there to get the heavy oil coming out of Canada, and you've got some around the kind of Louisiana and elsewhere and Texas to get that heavy oil that comes in from Venezuela. That was kind of the way they were set up. And it's really expensive to rebuild these things. You can't just chuck out a refinery very easily overnight. Some came from Mexico and the Gulf of Mexico as well, and that's pretty heavy too. So that's the picture in America. And the upshot is, even though America's producing more and more oil, the imports, this is showing you imports of oil into America, are still really high. And if you break down those imports by the country that stuff is coming from, well, there's Venezuela, and it used to be a decent slug, actually more coming from Venezuela just about than from Canada, just at the turn of the millennium. But now look at what's happened since. Right now, Canada has gone from 15% of all of the US imports of oil to 61%. 61%, and Venezuela's basically next to nothing. But here's what's tantalizing, and here's the reason I think that a lot of people are looking towards Venezuela and thinking, well, there's more to this than just drugs. Look at total oil reserves.
Well, it was never about the drugs. We all know that. We all know that now, right? It was never about the drugs.
Around the world. The higher these bars are, the more oil there is in the ground, so that hasn't yet been taken out of the ground. So there you've got Saudi, Iran, Iraq, all of the usual suspects. But the biggest of all, and this is according to various different sources, the biggest of all is Venezuela. And what's that oil? It's the heavy, tarry stuff that you might well want to put into those American refineries. And there is really only one other place in the world that has a kind of serious amount of heavy oil other than Canada and Venezuela. And lo and behold, guess where that is? It's Russia. All of which is to say, it matters what kind of oil America needs. It's worth just delving into these kind of nuances because that helps you understand a little bit more about the backstory of geopolitics.
So we knew it wasn't really going to be about drugs, right? Because, that's just not... now if we've taken over Venezuela...
The main reason he's interested in Venezuela, the main reason the US is kind of looking...
If we've taken over Venezuela, and that means all the drugs have now stopped, right? No more drugs out of Venezuela? All right, let me kind of go over the Don Doctrine.
The concert of Europe was a reactionary new order agreed upon by 5 great European powers: Britain, France, Prussia, Austria, and Russia, aiming to maintain the status quo on the continent and oppress any revolutionary activity that could disrupt that status quo. Simultaneously, Latin America was freeing itself from the shackles of the Spanish Empire thanks to successful revolutionary wars led by Simón Bolívar and José de San Martin. The United States wanted to have friendly relations with the new states of Latin America, and the Secretary of State, John Quincy Adams, instructed American diplomats to establish good political and commercial relations with them. However, the emergence of a reactionary union in Europe exacerbated fears of an imperial comeback of Europe.
Okay, so basically they said, hey, we got to make sure that we can kind of keep this country that we just kind of fought. So what's the plan, Stan?
To Latin America. Furthermore, in 1821, Russia declared exclusive rights over the North American Pacific coast, from Alaska to Oregon, and closed it to foreign shipping. Here, the United States and Britain's interests aligned, as the Americans did not want to see the return of the old empires to the Americas for ideological and pragmatic reasons, while Britain was not keen on Spain or any other European rival disrupting its trade with the Americas. Hence, the British Foreign Minister, George Canning, proposed to the Americans a joint statement opposing any further European intervention into the New World. President Monroe leaned towards accepting the British proposition, but was vigorously opposed by his Secretary of State, John Quincy Adams. Quincy argued against establishing a joint foreign policy with the British on several grounds. Firstly, the memory of the War of 1812 and the British burning the capital of Washington was still fresh. Second, Adams argued that acting in conjunction with the British would undermine American influence in its continental sphere, and that the United States should act on its own to bolster its claim of a regional power. Thus, the Americans decided to act unilaterally, and on December 2nd, 1823, President Monroe made a speech in Congress, which would later be known as the Monroe Doctrine. Quote, "The American continents, by the free and independent condition which they have assumed and maintain, are henceforth not to be considered as subjects for future colonization by any European powers." By saying...
you want me to call in? Look, Here's the gist of things. I'm going to have to speed this up. Because you know what? We're just going to watch. I'm going to watch
Secretary
this.
of State Marco Rubio. Mr. Secretary, thank you for joining us.
Because here's the gist of things. Oh, how did I get on the live? What happened? I blame you guys. So here's what I'm thinking is going to happen going on. I'm thinking the plan for Donald Trump, what the plan actually is that we're going to be moving down the Pan American Highway, and we're going to be moving our labor into, the goal, what he wants. Now, I don't think it's going to happen. What he wants would be to move labor down into the South America because that's cheap labor. Like, you're not going to move from China and cheap labor in China to bring everything back to the United States and maintain the cost of goods where you need them to be. That's just not a thing, right? That's fairly simple to understand. Now, what you could do is move everything from China down into Mexico and South America and stuff like that. But for you to do that, you have to stabilize South America. And to stabilize South America, in Donald Trump's mind, he's going to have to go in and do the Monroe Doctrine and basically take over Venezuela, probably Cuba. I don't think El Salvador because he likes El Salvador guy. But you're definitely going to have to take over Venezuela, Cuba, and Brazil's going to be a problem because Brazil sides more with China. So I think what he basically did was he decided to go into Venezuela, and he believes that taking over the oil and sending U.S. oil companies down there is going to then open up an opportunity for us to take back over Venezuela, and then I think he's going to go into Cuba next. So here's the things we have to watch for. One of the things you have to watch for is going to be him going into Cuba and Colombia. I think Cuba and Colombia are the next places that he's going to end up going into. Now, let me do this here. Let me get rid of this. So, oh, that's Nick. All right. Right now, did you guys know that Venezuelans can now apply to become refugees in the United States? So we're back.
Venezuela today is more free than it was yesterday, and it's going to continue to be that way as long as President Trump is in the White House and is making sure that he's protecting the interests of the American people, because that ripple effect will continue to bring that kind of liberty to Venezuela as well. These programs, we're bringing integrity back to them. The decisions are made in conjunction with the State Department, with the White House, and then we at Homeland Security implement them and make sure that they are followed through. So every individual that was under TPS has the opportunity to apply for refugee status, and that evaluation will go forward. But we need to make sure that our programs actually mean something and that we're following the law. And that's how that decision with TPS was made.
Okay, so now after this, all of the Venezuelans that are here under temporary status, or any of the other ones that want to seek refugee, can now come to the United States and seek and seek refuge. Okay? Now, why? Why would this be something that the Trump administration is now saying, yeah, we're not closing the borders anymore. We're opening the borders to Venezuelans who want to come to the United States and seek refuge. Well, if we went in there and just liberated Venezuelan, why would you do that? Well, the reason you would do that is any of them that would want to come here, get educated, get trained, would probably be the first ones that, if offered job opportunities at a higher skill level, to go back to Venezuela, you'd be able to send them back to Venezuela, not send them, but offer them an opportunity to go back to Venezuela because they've learned trades and skills here that they can go back to their country and then train and give skill sets to other Venezuelans that didn't come, right? So that's kind of why you would do that. So this is another thing pointing in the direction of, hey, I think what the plan is to basically, in Trump's mind, which I don't think it's going to work because I don't think it's going to take way too long to do this, would be to move jobs and things down to Venezuela. Right? Like, why else would you bring them here to give them refugee here when you just liberated their country? Why would they need Why would they need refuge? What's going on? But now they would fall under refugees, right? And this is, Trump's administration basically saying this. So, breaking, Venezuelans can now apply to become refugees in the United States. Well, sounds great. Sounds great. All right. And let's listen to Rubio.
This morning, President Trump was pretty clear yesterday. He said the United States is going to run Venezuela. Under what legal authority?
Well, first of all, what's going to happen here is that we have a quarantine on their oil. That means their economy will not be able to move forward until the conditions that are in the national interest of the United States and the interest of the Venezuelan people are met. And that's what we intend to do. So that leverage remains. That leverage is ongoing. And we expect that it's going to lead to results here. We're hopeful that it does. Positive results for the people of Venezuela, but ultimately, most importantly for us, in the national interest of the United States. We will no longer have, hopefully, as we move forward here, we'll set the conditions so that we no longer have in our hemisphere a Venezuela that's the crossroads for many of our adversaries around the world, including Iran and Hezbollah, is no longer sending us drug gangs, is no longer sending us drug boats.
Just so you know, Sonia.
His number, 856-600-4654. Sage Outcast. I have questions.
True. All right.
Is no longer a narco trafficking paradise for all those drugs coming out of Colombia to going through the Caribbean and towards the United States. And obviously, we want a better future for the people of Venezuela. We want them to have an oil industry where the wealth goes to the people, not to a handful of corrupt individuals and stolen by pirates all over the world.
I'm kind of confused. How does that work? Like, do you guys think that our oil industry here in America, that the wealth of our oil industry goes to the people? Does that make sense? Like, he just said he wants the wealth of the oil to go to the people. Is that how it works here?
That's what we're working towards, and we intend to use the leverage we have to help achieve that.
Let me ask the question again. What is the legal authority for the United States to be running Venezuela?
Well, I explained to you what our goals are and how we're going to use the leverage to make it happen. As far as what our legal authority is on the quarantine, I'm very simple. We have court orders. These are sanctioned boats, and we get orders from courts to go after and seize these sanctions. So I don't know, is a court not a legal authority?
Well, he's asking not if we have legal authority over the boats. Do we have legal authority to run a country?
Is the United States running Venezuela right now?
Well, I've explained once again, I'll do it one more time. What we are running is the direction that this is going to move moving forward. And that is, we have leverage. This leverage we are using and we intend to use. We started using already. You can see where they are running out of storage capacity. In a few weeks, they're going to have to start pumping oil unless they make changes. And that leverage that we have with the armada of boats that are currently positioned allow us to seize any sanctioned boats coming into or out of Venezuela, loaded with oil or on its way in to pick up oil, and we can pick and choose which ones we go after. We have court orders for each one. That will continue to be in place until the people who have control over the levers of power in that country make changes that are not just in the interest of the people of Venezuela, but are in the interest of the United States and the things that we care about. That's what we intend to do. The legal authority is the court orders that we have.
When the president was asked yesterday who will be running Venezuela, he said it was you, he said it was the defense secretary, he said it was the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Are you running Venezuela right now?
I mean, the question is, who's in charge?
George, I've explained again that the leverage that we have here is the leverage of the quarantine. So that is a Department of War operation, conducting, in some cases, law enforcement functions with the Coast Guard on the seizure of these boats. I'm obviously very intricately involved in these policies. And by the way, very intricately involved in moving forward and what we hope to see some of these changes being addressed. Unfortunately, the person that was there before, who was not the legitimate president of the country, was someone we could not work with, was someone that we could not. He had already suckered the Biden administration a couple years ago on a deal he didn't keep. And this is someone we simply couldn't work with. We are hopeful that there are people in place now. We're going to find out. The proof will be in what they do or fail to do, that will start making some of these changes that will ultimately lead to a Venezuela that looks substantially and dramatically different from what's been in place for 15 years. But our number one objective is America. We care about Venezuela. We want it to do well moving forward. But our number one objective here is America. No more drugs, no more trained out agua gangs coming our direction, and no more.
So I have a quick question. Do you guys think if we're moving, let's just say we were going to drill oil down there, and companies go down there, okay? Oil companies, let's just say that they're willing to invest all this money into this possibility, right? What happens with the U.S. oil drilling up here? Is that, like, what's the plan there? If we're drilling down there and it's cheaper to drill oil down there than it is up here, and we have processing plants that are basically more geared for heavy oil, and they can convert that into pretty much everything, how does that affect U.S. drilling up here? Does that make sense? Like, it sounds like if we're drilling more and we're setting up other countries, That means we need less drilling up here.
An area of the country in our hemisphere that becomes a crossroads for every single adversary we have around the world. Hezbollah, Iran, all of them have turned it into their playground. That can and will not continue under this administration.
So is it your position now that the Vice President, Delcy Rodriguez, is now the legitimate president of Venezuela?
Well, this is not about the legitimate president. We don't believe that this regime in place is legitimate via an election, and that's not just us. It's 60-something countries around the world that have taken that view as well, including the European Union. But we understand that there are people in Venezuela today who are the ones that can actually make changes. So, for example, when we want to send in the migrant flights, even though we never recognized the Maduro regime,
I mean, you're welcome to call in. If you disagree with me, you're welcome to call in and explain it to me.
Legitimate. We had to deal with the authorities that controlled the airport. We had to deal with the people who had guns and the people who had control of the airports. We had to deal with them to achieve these objectives. That's different from recognizing their legitimacy. Ultimately, legitimacy for their system of government will come about through a period of transition and real elections, which they have not had. And by the way, it's the reason why Maduro is not just an indicted drug trafficker. He's illegitimate president. He was not the head of state. And I continue to see these media reports referring to him as President Maduro and the head of state. He was not the head of state. He was not the head. And it's not just us saying it. The Biden administration said it. And so did 60-something countries around the world hold that position.
The president said that you spoke with the Vice President Rodriguez and that she promised to do whatever the United States needs. But in her televised statement, she was pretty defiant, saying that Maduro is still president and that the Venezuelan people will no longer be slaves or the colony of an empire. That's a quote. What exactly did she say to you, and what comes next?
Well, we're not going to judge moving forward based simply on what's said in press conferences. We want to see action here at the end of the day. Rhetoric is one thing. You see rhetoric for a lot of different reasons. There's a lot of different reasons why people go on TV and say certain things in these countries, especially 15 hours or 12 hours after the person who used to be in charge of the regime is now in handcuffs and on his way to New York. So what I will say is moving forward, it's very simple. We're not going to be reactive here to statements at press conferences or what people say in a certain interview or what some media post somewhere. What we are going to react to is very simple. What do you do? Not what you're saying publicly. What happens? What happens next? Do the drugs stop coming? Are the changes made? Is Iran expelled? Is Hezbollah no longer able and Iran no longer able to operate against our interests from Venezuela? Does the migration pattern stop? The drug trafficking boats end? Do you deal with it?
Well, wait, the migration pattern, you just invited them all to take refuge in the United States.
The ELN and the FARC, two narco-terrorist organizations who control territory and operate with impunity from the territory of Venezuela against the interests of Colombia and the United States. These are the things we want addressed. If they are addressed, that's how we'll judge it. If they're not addressed, that's how we'll judge it.
And what happens if they're not addressed?
Well, as I said, we retain all the options we had before this raid and this capture and this arrest was made. We continue. The quarantine is in place right now. If you are a sanctioned boat and you are headed towards Venezuela, you will be seized either on the way in or on the way out with a court order that we get from judges in the United States. We will continue to enforce our sanctions. And that is going to continue to happen until such time as changes are made. I cannot overstate how crippling this is for their future. On the other hand, there's an alternative to that. And here's the alternative. And that is an oil industry that actually benefits the people, that actually goes to the benefit, not of people, of the people, not just 2 or 3 or 5 people who are stealing it.
How does that work? Like, how does that work? Like, if our U.S. companies go down there and pump that oil and Donald Trump says we're going to be taking all the oil, how does it benefit the people?
And certainly not to Iran or any of the other sanctioned entities that we're going after.
But how does the United States intend to secure the oil fields? Won't that take U.S. troops?
Well, ultimately, this is not about securing the oil fields. This is about ensuring that no sanctioned oil can come in and out until they make changes to the governance of that entire industry. Because right now, that industry is non-existent in the traditional way. These oil fields basically are pirate operations. People literally steal the oil from the ground. That's how they hold this regime together. A handful of cronies benefit from this oil, specific oil wells. They're producing at like 18% capacity because the equipment is all decrepit, and they basically pocket the money to their benefit. They sell the oil at a discount in global markets, 40 cents on the dollar, 50 cents on the dollar, but all that money goes to them. Those oil fields have not benefited the people of Venezuela.
That's how oil business. Wait, back that up. Hang on, I want to make sure.
Cronies benefit from this oil. People literally steal the oil from the ground. That's how they hold these oil fields, the governance of that entire industry. Okay. Because right now that industry is non-existent in the traditional way. These oil fields basically are pirate operations. People literally steal the oil from the ground.
They steal the oil from the ground. So the United States is going to steal the oil from the ground. We're going to, okay.
That's how they hold this regime together. A handful of cronies benefit from this oil, specific oil wells. They're producing at like 18% capacity because the equipment is all decrepit, and they basically pocket the money to their benefit. They sell the oil at a discount in global markets, 40 cents on the dollar, 50 cents on the dollar, but all that money goes to them. Those oil fields have not benefited the people of Venezuela.
Isn't that how oil companies work? Oil companies go in, maybe not steal, but oil companies go in and pull the oil out of the ground and then sell the oil. Isn't that how oil companies work?
Well, in over a decade.
Okay.
But they have made multi-millionaires, billionaires, out of just a handful of people, and that's what's held this regime together.
Is he talking about our oil? Who's he talking about right now?
That's what needs to be addressed. The way to address it to the benefit of the Venezuelan people is to get private companies that are not from Iran or somewhere else to go in, invest in the equipment that hasn't been invested in 20 years, because none of the profits that have been made from the oil have been reinvested. It's all been stolen. And that's going to take outside companies that come in and know how to do that. The people who do this stuff will know how to do it. But it all begins with dramatic changes at the way on the way that the authorities that are in charge of that industry behave. And until those changes happen, this quarantine will remain in place.
Chevron is the only American company working in Venezuela right now, only American oil company working in Venezuela right now. Have you gotten commitments from any other U.S. oil companies to go in?
No.
I haven't spoken to U.S. oil companies.
So I've actually done a little bit of digging into that. And right now, a lot of the other oil companies are like, no, we're not making any comment on this right now. I think it's just way too expensive.
In the last few days, but we're pretty certain that there will be dramatic interest from Western companies, non-Russian, non-Chinese companies will be very interested. Our refineries in the Gulf Coast of the United States are the best in terms of refining this heavy crude, and there's actually been a shortage of heavy crude around the world. So I think there will be tremendous demand and interest from private industry if given the space to do it, if given the opportunity to do it. And that will spin off tremendous royalties for the people of Venezuela, to benefit the people of that country, not the handful of people at the top, but the people. And you know, that can.
Do we get?
I thought this war was over drugs.
It's not. Well, see, the problem is they were over there sniffing oil, smoking oil, and that's what it was. So it wasn't fentanyl. It was tar sands. Tar sands was actually they were sniffing.
Happen. There will be interest. I haven't spoken to the companies since all of this has happened. I'm certainly aware of who they are, and I have spoken to Secretary Wright and Secretary Burgum and others. And I know they'll soon be sort of taking an assessment and speaking to some of these companies. But I don't have any concerns that there won't be interest. There'll be tremendous interest if it can be done the right way.
I'm still not clear on what the legal authority is for the United States to run the country of Venezuela, but several members of Congress and other legal experts have said this operation to take Maduro was illegal because you didn't seek congressional authorization. Why wasn't congressional authorization necessary?
It wasn't necessary because this was not an invasion. We didn't occupy a country. This was an arrest operation. This was a law enforcement operation. He was arrested on the ground in Venezuela by FBI agents, read his rights, and removed from the country. I encourage everyone. I know it's Sunday, people are busy, but the indictments have now been unsealed. People should read this indictment. They should read this indictment. They should read what this man did for the last 15 years of his life against the United States, him and his wife.
And he might have something. He might have something that, well, you should still inform Congress. But if it was a law enforcement, I'd have to look into it.
Obviously, this was not a friendly territory. So in order to arrest him, we had to ask the Department of War to become involved in this operation. The Department of War went in, they hit anything that was a threat to the agents that were going in to arrest them, and they hit anything that was a threat on the way out, and they hit anything that was a threat to them while they were on the ground. And that was a very limited and targeted operation. It is also a trigger-based operation. All kinds of conditions had to be in place. The weather had to be right. He had to be staying in a certain spot. Everything had to be in place for order that to happen. You can't congressionally notify something like this for two reasons. Number one, it will leak. It's as simple as that. And number two, it's an exigent circumstance. It's an emergent thing. You don't even know if you're going to be able to do it. We can't notify them we're going to do it on a Tuesday or on a Wednesday, because at some points we didn't know we were going to be able to carry this out. We didn't know if all of the things that had to line up were going to line up at the same time in the right conditions. You know, he had to be at the right place at the right time with the right weather and all sorts of things like that. So those are very difficult to notify. But the number one reason is operational security.
Well,
we would have put
as you know,
carried this on in harm's way. And frankly, a number of media outlets had gotten leaks that this was coming and held it for that very reason. And we thank them for doing that, or lives could have been lost.
As you know, the Congressional Gang of Eight has a history of not leaking. But you mentioned the indictment of Mr. Maduro, and of course it does detail his drug running operations. In the same jurisdiction, the former president of Honduras was actually convicted on similar charges, yet the president pardoned him. Here's what the vice chair of the Senate Intelligence Committee, Mark Warner, had to say about that. He said, "You cannot credibly argue that drug trafficking charges demand invasion in one case while issuing a pardon in another." What's your response?
Well, the president has the pardon authority. He's the one that reviewed the file with the folks at the White House to make these pardon decisions, and I refer questions to them on it because I'm not involved in the pardon process. So I can't comment on that because I wasn't involved in that process. But the president outlined yesterday that he felt that in that particular case there was unfairness, and that there was unfairness in the way that individual was treated. And he also pointed to the fact that the party that's now won the elections in Honduras had asked for this. And so I would point to those comments as a rationale for it. In the case of Maduro, look, it's very simple. This guy was indicted. No one ever did anything about it. He didn't think he was under threat or that the indictment was ever going to be enforced. It was enforced yesterday.
Hernandez was convicted by a jury.
I understand. You're asking me, the pardon authority is something that, I'm not involved in my role. I'm not criticizing it. I can't just comment on it because I just wasn't involved in those deliberations.
Do you support it?
I wasn't involved in those deliberations. I haven't looked at the case file. I haven't looked at the arguments made by, I've got a bunch of other things going on that are within my purview as Secretary.
Of course he supports. We can't say he doesn't support it, right? He has to support it.
State and National Security Advisor, but pardons aren't one of them. So I can't comment on a case that, frankly, I'm aware of, but not deeply and familiar with, and I don't want to comment on something that I haven't had a chance to be involved in reviewing the file and the rationale behind it.
Mr. Secretary,
maybe if Maduro gives Trump millions of dollars, he'll get a pardon too.
Yeah, we're waiting. Pardon. He's got the money together, so we're waiting for the pardon to be issued.
Thank
But
you.
we have to wait for the conviction, then the pardon.
Thank you.
All right, one more. Here we go.
Next target for United States regime change
Oh,
is
shit.
Cuba. The Cuban government will likely be the target of the American government
He
to
talks
remove
faster.
the head of Cuba, the Castro regime, to conduct regime change in Cuba like we have in Venezuela with Nicolas Maduro. At the same time, Rubio is actively distancing himself from a pardon issued by Donald Trump concerning drug trafficking, the former president of Honduras, who was pardoned just as he was beginning to serve a 45-year sentence for trafficking large amounts of cocaine and other drugs into the United States of America. This is a critical update because the administration is double turning itself at every turn. Make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe to spread the word, and subscribe to my Substack at the link below to support my work. Let's just jump right into it. This morning, Marco Rubio was asked point blank what authority that the United States had to conduct not just the strikes, but also to continue the occupation of Venezuela for an indefinite period of time to, quote, run Venezuela. I want you to hear what he had to say.
This morning, President Trump was pretty clear yesterday. He said the United States is going to run Venezuela. Under what legal authority?
Well, first of all, what's going to happen here is that we have a quarantine on their oil. That means their economy will not be able to move forward until the conditions that are in the national interest of the United States and the interest of the Venezuelan people are met. And that's what we intend to do. So that leverage remains. That leverage is ongoing. And we expect that it's going to lead to results here. We're hopeful that it does. Positive results for the people of Venezuela, but ultimately, most importantly for us, in the national interest of the United States. We will no longer have, hopefully, as we move forward here, we'll set the conditions so that we no longer have in our hemisphere a Venezuela that's the crossroads for many of our adversaries around the world, including Iran and Hezbollah, is no longer sending us drug gangs, is no longer sending us drug boats, is no longer a narco trafficking paradise for all those drugs coming out of Colombia to go in through the Caribbean and towards the United States. And obviously we want a better future for the people of Venezuela. We want them to have an oil industry where the wealth goes to the people, not to a handful of corrupt individuals and stolen by pirates all over the world. That's what we're working towards, and we intend to use the leverage we have to help achieve that.
As you can see, he doesn't actually say what legal authority there is, and he's pressed on this. Take a listen.
Let me ask the question again. What is the legal authority for the United States to be running Venezuela?
Well, I explained to you what our goals are and how we're going to use the leverage to make it happen. As far as what our legal authority is on the quarantine, I'm very simple. We have court orders. These are sanctioned boats, and we get orders from courts to go after and seize these sanctions. So that's, I don't know, is a court not a legal authority?
So is the United States running Venezuela right now?
Well, I've explained once again, I'll do it one more time. What we are running is the direction that this is going to move moving forward. And
so they're not running Venezuela, or are they running Venezuela? Doesn't really make any sense.
That is, we have leverage. This leverage we are using and we intend to use. We started using already. You can see where they are running out of storage capacity. In a few weeks, they're going to have to start pumping oil unless they make changes. And that leverage that we have with the armada of boats that are currently positioned allow us to seize any sanctioned boats coming into or out of Venezuela, loaded with oil or on its way in to pick up oil. And we can pick and choose which ones we go after. We have court orders for each one. That will continue to be in place.
By the way, court orders do not supersede international law. For those who are wondering, international law is the law by which countries have to follow when they're conducting seizures of boats, for example, on the high seas. There's specific laws that govern what the United States can and can't be doing in these situations. Court orders alone often are not enough. But I will say this, Marco Rubio is setting his sights on another country very quickly, the country of Cuba.
Read the indictment.
Is the Cuban government
Thank you so much for the subscription.
Next target, Mr. Secretary? Very quickly.
Well, the Cuban...
And phone lines are open. You're welcome to call in. Is there people arguing in the chat? You're welcome to call in.
His number, 856-600-4654. Sage Outcast. I have questions.
Government is a huge problem. Yeah, the Cuban government is a huge problem. First
So
of all,
is that a yes?
Cuba, but I don't think people fully appreciate I think they're in a lot of trouble. Yes, I'm not going to talk to you about what our future steps are going to be and our policies are going to be right now in this regard, but I don't think it's any mystery that we are not big fans of the Cuban regime, who, by the way, are the ones that were propping up Maduro. His entire internal security force, his internal security apparatus is entirely controlled by Cubans. One of the untold stories here is how, in essence, you talk about colonization, because I think you said Delcy Rodriguez mentioned that. The ones who have sort of colonized, at least inside the regime, are Cubans. It was Cubans that guarded Maduro. He was not guarded by Venezuelan bodyguards. He had Cuban bodyguards. In terms of their internal intelligence, who spies on who inside to make sure there are no traitors, those are all Cubans.
All right, Secretary.
It's making clear that Cuba is likely next in this regime change effort by the United States of America. He was also asked about kind of the hypocrisy that we're seeing here. The Trump administration, just in the past couple months, pardoned the former president of Honduras, who was convicted of the facilitation of drug trafficking tons of cocaine into the United States of America. He was convicted by a jury of his peers in the United States of America, sentenced to 45 years in federal prison, and now was pardoned by the president. And well, Marco Rubio was asked about this morning, and he tried his hardest to distance himself from that pardon. Take a listen.
Use the levers of their security apparatus, not to arrest drug traffickers, but to cooperate and facilitate the trafficking of drugs for the purpose of getting them into the United States. And that's going to stop.
And yet, Mr. Secretary, a month ago, President Trump pardoned the former president of Honduras, who was just starting a 45-year sentence for trafficking more than 500 tons of cocaine. Does that not undercut the administration's stated goal, as you just said, to go after these narco-terrorists?
Number one, the former president of Honduras. So this is not someone who was in power, had any influence with the politics of Honduras any longer. Number two, I don't do the pardon file. I'm not against it or for it. I just didn't review the file, so I can't speak to you about the dynamics that led the president to make the decision that he made. I think he talked about it yesterday at the press conference. He reviewed the file, he went through the arguments in it, and he felt that the former president of Honduras was treated very unfairly by the previous administration and made the decision that he made. But I think the answer, whether you agree with that decision or not, people can disagree. I mean, there's people out there who make a living out of disagreeing with anything President Trump does. That doesn't mean you leave Maduro in place. That doesn't mean you don't go after Maduro. That's not the answer. I see people saying that. It's like, well, you know, how can you go after Maduro if you didn't do this? That's absurd. The answer to that, whether you have a problem with it or not, is not to leave in place someone who's been indicted, who hasn't even faced American justice yet.
I will say this. If we're talking about just taking leaders who have been indicted across the world, you have ICC criminal arrest warrants issued against Benjamin Netanyahu in Israel, Vladimir Putin in Russia.
Ooh, that's a good point.
And there are other leaders as well facing ICC.
And there's literally an arrest warrant for Putin, and Putin met Trump in Alaska.
ICC arrest warrants. Does that give us the ability to now legally go into Israel or Russia, capture Vladimir Putin, capture Netanyahu, bring them to The Hague to stand trial? Does that give us the authority to do that? The answer is likely no. We can't just do that without congressional authorization. They're double turning themselves. They don't really have an answer right now, and they're shifting the narrative as to what the future of Venezuela is. I will continue to provide you more updates as we get more information. Like, comment, share, and subscribe.
Okay, now let's kind of go over what I basically said. So a lot of this right here, this was on G-Captain, and this kind of explains it too, and I watched some other videos in regards to this. But they're basically saying that they're not, Chevron, a lot of these companies are not going. Exxon, ConocoPhillips have also experienced operation in Venezuela, but quit. Did my phone just ring? No. But quit the country after their assets were nationalized by Maduro Chavez. So Chavez Jesus Christ, we went in there in like 1970 area, 6 maybe, I think 70 area. And then early 2000s, Chavez basically said, hey, oil's ours, you're out of here. And we're just not going to give you this oil. You're out of here. Goodbye. It's nationalized now. Well, I've been reading article after article after article after article here, and it is barely, it's unclear how willing oil giants like Exxon, Chevron Corp, ConocoPhillips, and others are to pour substantial sums of money into the country run by a temporary U.S.-backed government without establishment of legal and fiscal rules. Exxon and ConocoPhillips didn't respond to requests for comments on Saturday. This is the same thing in regards to tariffs. Right now there is no established government in Venezuela. And if you're going to be the United States, if I'm going to invest hundreds of billions of dollars into another country for oil, hundreds of billions of dollars, and 10 years or 5 years or 8 years or however long it takes to get everything up and running, and to be efficient and profitable, why would I do that for a temporary situation that can technically be turned off? Like, the country could basically say, yeah, we changed our mind, unless the United States stays there, right? So here's what I'm thinking about that. The only way that any country, any government is going to be able to stay there is if they have a reason to stay there other than oil. Like, you're not going to just be able to stay there and say, hey, we're here to protect the oil fields like we did in Iraq and Afghanistan and all these other places, right? That doesn't go well. But what if one of the reasons you stayed in the country was to take over the port, like China did with Greece, or I think China did with Israel, and manage the ports, like a Hong Kong-based company that now manages the Panama Canal. They don't own it, but they manage the Panama Canal. So one of the ports that we ended up blowing up was one of their main ports. So we did some damage to this port right here. We attacked this port. Now, the excuse was that we attacked this port based on the fact that this is where all the drugs get loaded. So basically what you're trying to tell me is that all the drugs are heading to the main port, the main container port of Venezuela. You don't think that these drugs are on these little small boats? They're heading to this huge port to load their small drug boats. No, that's not the case. Because a lot of those can be basically loaded in any type of rivers that eventually can make it out to the ocean. But if you were to come in here and you were to attack this port, hang on, which we did right here. This is also the port where the Navy's at. Looks like two Navy vessels, because that one right there looks like it has a helipad on it, on the vessel. But you can also see that there's containers here. There's containers right here. Container ship. This is a container port. The oil port is over here. Anyways, the oil port's over here. But we ended up hitting the container port. Okay? Now, why? Why would you... Now, if you were to come in there and say, well, look, we're going to go in there and we're going to rebuild your port. You know, the one that we blew up. We're going to rebuild that for you. But if we rebuild it, we want to manage the port. We want to be in charge of this port. Sort of like other countries have gone in and taken over ports in Greece and stuff like that. So if you're going to take over the container port, that also means that you're going to have a stake in any type of manufacturing of other items other than oil and gas in this area. I think the goal, long term it might be, or his thought process, which I don't think it'll work because I think it'll take too long, is that we were looking to move manufacturing, if we can stabilize the country, down to Venezuela. If we start giving them jobs, build up their infrastructure in regards to electrical grids and stuff like that, and we manage their ports, now it kind of gives an excuse to basically start manufacturing in this area and slowly pull away from China. I know it sounds crazy. But I just don't see... That would be the Monroe Doctrine or the Don Doctrine that was a part of Trump's strategic, national strategic plan that he put out in 2025. That's the only other aspect I can see in regards to blowing up this port. Now, Russia's not happy with this. I think I have another video here. Russia was definitely not happy with some of this. They're bitching. I watched a video in regards... I know Venezuela was happy, but Russia's not happy. And the Russian... Let me pull that video real quick here, too. Actually, I wanted to do this one here, too. I wanted to play Mr. Global.
Seized Maduro took him out of the country. I've been on the road all day, very busy, spoken to a lot of journalists today, haven't had time to make a lot of content on all of this. I'm getting tons of questions. I hope I can cover all of that in this video right here. Venezuela, the oil, OPEC, all of it. And this is going to be kind of scattered because I hadn't planned for this. I just got home from being on the road, but I think I can cover this really well. So Donald Trump is claiming that U.S. oil companies can return to Venezuela, make their investments and get rich and we'll have all this oil and all. Just forget what Donald Trump says. Just forget anything he says about oil in Venezuela because he hasn't a clue what he is talking about. And at this point, removing Maduro and just installing the VP apparently and having them run the country, just doing whatever he says, that doesn't fix anything. That doesn't fix anything. So let's cover a few things first.
Who is this loser again?
This is the he is basically just a TikTok just because listen, nowadays just because you own an energy company, you've been in the industry for 30 years, you've helped write some of the safety guidelines for I think it was Chevron Chevron and that he has been where they have given him paperwork saying that he is an oil expert doesn't mean much nowadays. So he's just another dumb TikToker / YouTuber, basically. Energy expert, but if he doesn't go against your narrative, he's just a dumb TikToker / YouTuber.
We went in and seized a country, the oil of a founding member of OPEC. There are members of OPEC that we know for sure aren't happy with us, OPEC and OPEC Plus. Russia is a member of OPEC Plus, not OPEC, but it's literally the same group. I just like to make that distinction for the people that will scream, Russia's not a member of OPEC. They're a member of OPEC Plus. They're essentially a member of OPEC. The first question is there going to be any repercussions of that? Is there going to be anything come from that? And the answer is, if anything happens from that, we won't see it for a while. But I can assure you one thing. If they aren't happy about this, we will find out, and it will come to us in a way that is veiled, that we don't see coming. I might see it coming. Trump isn't going to see it coming.
Thank you so much for the description. Thank you. Also, the phone lines are open. I guess everybody's agreeing with me today because nobody's calling in to tell me I'm an idiot. But you're welcome to call in. I've had a couple last week. We had some decent conversations.
A perfect example of this, the way OPEC exacts its revenge on people, the OPEC 2020 deal was a brilliantly and beautifully crafted plan for OPEC to exact revenge on the United States. You go to 2018, Donald Trump convinced OPEC to increase production so he could put sanctions on oil from Iran.
Oh, look at that. Who just reported on the port? Freightways. They left its biggest container port in shambles. So it would be good if the United States went over there and started repairing it and taking it over, because then we could move manufacturing down there and it would fix it.
And they agreed to do so with the understanding that the market would not crash because Iranian oil was going to be taken off the market. They were only going to increase the amount that was going to be taken off the market by Iran, so it wouldn't flood the market and it wouldn't crash. As soon as OPEC got that production up where Donald Trump asked him to, he granted waivers to Iran and crashed the global oil market.
Sorry.
The OPEC 2020 deal was OPEC's revenge against Donald Trump for crashing the oil market and costing them hundreds of billions of dollars. And to this day, I don't think he knows that that was their revenge. I don't even think he's aware of it. We're all aware of it. We were the ones paying $5 for gas. This is what I'm talking about. So if there's any retribution here, and I don't know that there's going to be, because I honestly don't believe this impacts OPEC in a huge way. It would impact OPEC if U.S. oil companies all ran to Venezuela. That would be a huge deal. I just don't think that's going to happen. So if there's any retribution from OPEC, it'll come close to the midterms. They like to do things that impact elections. And it'll look like some sort of good deal.
What is my experience in the oil industry? I'm in logistics, working with a very large oil company for 17 years.
But it won't be. But we'll just have to see what happens. We'll just have to see. There's obviously other considerations. Iran could do some things. Russia can do some things with attacks and terror attacks and things like that. But I'm really going to stick to the oil here. So first of all, this idea that American oil companies are going to rush to Venezuela to produce all this oil, that's not a thing. Okay? Having the largest oil reserves in the world doesn't mean what Donald Trump thinks it means. The only thing that matters is the value of that oil and how much you can profit on it.
Right.
Personally, I would rather have United States oil reserves with the value it holds and the amount of profit it holds than have all of Venezuela's. Having a bunch of something that doesn't deliver you much profit and value doesn't amount to a hill of beans.
Plus, oil companies in the 1970s, when we had the oil embargoes and stuff like that, oil just it was a boom, just go, drill. Now it's not the same. A lot of it's about profit. Like if you're not making a profit and efficiency and being as efficient as possible, it's not just, run down there and just start with, drilling oil. It's a lot about being efficient.
People are so focused on the amount of oil there. Who cares if you can't make a fortune on it? And you can't. That's the problem. It's not the best investment out there by any means. It's not even close. You're looking at $100 billion of investment needed over a decade to restore the infrastructure to where it once was. $100 billion. So this idea of asking American oil companies who are currently having a hard time due to what? Donald Trump's policies with OPEC.
Oh, that's a good one.
Who are laying off people, who are cutting their budgets, cutting CapEx, who are laying down rigs, trying to preserve cash flow. These companies are going to go invest $100 billion in Venezuela? In an unstable country? It's ludicrous. And people will say, well, Chevron is there. Not really. Chevron is there, but they're not.
I mean, right now, the price of oil is $58 a barrel. $57 a barrel. $57.98 a barrel. Right? It takes about $70 a barrel to profit up here. $65, $70 a barrel to profit. Why would you drill more oil when you can't profit off of the oil that you're drilling? Right? I don't profit. It built their economy until disruption. Yeah, it did during the years that they did it, their economy. The problem is that we're not the Venezuelan economy. Like if you're making $5 a day, your economy is a lot easier to build than if you're making $30 an hour, right?
Not investing in the country. The reason Chevron is there is because they took a 20% stake in PDVSA, which is Venezuela's state-owned national oil company. They made a big blunder and they took a 20% stake in that. They lost $4 billion.
Yeah, that's right now. Oh, hang on, back that up. Back that up. Back it up.
Is Venezuela's state-owned national oil, because they really, Chevron is there, but they're not investing in the country.
Chevron.
The reason Chevron is there is because they took a 20% stake in PDVSA, which is Venezuela's state-owned national oil company. They made a big blunder and they took a 20% stake in that. They lost $4 billion. So the reason they're there is to assist PDVSA in trying to recover their losses. They're literally getting paid in barrels of oil. So they're there helping Venezuela, and Venezuela is just giving them some oil. Like they're not even getting paid. And it's going to take God knows how long for them to recover their $4 billion they've lost. So,
yeah, right now Chevron is Chevron. Oh God, Jesus Christ! Why Chevron still operates in Venezuela despite U.S. sanctions? Even if you lifted sanctions, they're still operating at a loss.
They're there because they're stuck there.
PDVSA owes Chevron hundreds of millions of dollars after failing for years to cover its share for joint venture costs.
And they're committed to getting that money back that they lost. They're not there because they think there's some fortune to be made there. The removal of sanctions in Venezuela is not enough to restore oil production in Venezuela. It's not. It doesn't fix all of the other problems. The companies are still having to face unresolved expropriation claims, contract enforcement risk, fear of policy reversal. What if the next president comes in and changes everything? There's going to be a lot of stuff that's going to have to take place for a U.S. oil company to consider going to Venezuela. You're going to need international arbitration protections. You're going to need contract sanctity guarantees, political risk insurance. The country's going to actually have to be stable, where every person there working doesn't have to be guarded with an armed guard. We are light years away from oil companies just saying, yeah, I'll go back to Venezuela.
Yeah, why would they? There's safer places to
And
drill
honestly,
oil.
I believe just the rebuilding of the infrastructure is a deal breaker. Why would you invest that much money into that? Oil companies in the United States can put their money anywhere they want. They don't even have to invest it in oil. They literally have people.
Which they don't. They actually put oil in renewables. They put oil in everything. I'm sorry, they put money in everything.
Mountains of cash and invest it in financial markets all over the world. They don't need to spend $100 billion in Venezuela to try to make some money. Like that's, and to think that they would is just ridiculous. And besides all of that, Venezuela is probably at the very bottom on the list of global investment, even if it's completely sanction free. You have a very heavy, sour, high sulfur oil that is very expensive to produce, to lift, to process. It requires diluent imports. They have to build all new refineries that require constant maintenance. U.S. oil today lives in a world of capital discipline, not Venezuela.
Yeah, I mean that exactly. Like right now, there's more. They don't just throw money at everything and under the sun like they used to, right? They want to be efficient. They're becoming more efficient. They're laying down oil rigs in the United States right now. So the last thing they're doing is just saying, "Yeah, let's throw money into Venezuela. That's great." That's what I don't see happening. I don't see this happening either.
And the way the country of Venezuela has made it work in recent years, for them to just be able to produce some oil and give it to people they owe money to, is basically using all the old junk equipment, slave labor. Do you know a petroleum engineer that works in Venezuela for the government? Do you know what their salary is? It's like $5 a week. And a lot of those people don't get paid anything, but the professionals, the professional engineers, the highly technically skilled people, they might make $5 a week. There may be a guy or two out there making $10 a week. They're, before Maduro was captured, they weren't allowed to resign. They were forced to work and live in barracks. I mean, it's basically slaves. And with this nationalized oil company using slave labor, the country is still poor. And by the way, Maduro himself wasn't uber rich. He said he would leave the country for $40 million. If Maduro was fleecing Venezuela of its oil riches, he wouldn't need $40 million to leave the country. He would make that like in no time. The country isn't poor just because of Maduro. He didn't help. But you would think a country that's been producing around 800,000 barrels of oil a day using slave labor, you would think they would have a few bucks. I mean, I don't expect them to be rich.
They have a few.
It's not a highly profitable proposition to go to Venezuela.
Yeah, I just don't see it.
So the idea that U.S. oil companies...
Then what are you going to do? Because remember, you have to sell this oil, right? So you have to sell this oil. So this oil is being sold for, let's say, $50 a barrel. Okay? I'm just going to pick numbers, make my life simple. So you then have to, and it's being sold by being at $1 an hour or $1 a day, whatever he just said, right? Or slave labor. Now you have to pay people to do it, because if you're going to give the riches back to the country, you have to sell it for a profit that you can employ people to pump the oil and make a profit yourself, right? Because you're an oil company that just invested $100 billion into the infrastructure of the oil. So they sold a lot of oil because the oil was so cheap, right? You get people, it was cheap. But if now you have to raise the price of the oil to be, but you still have to stay competitive with Canada, let's just say, and the tar sands oil, how people might say, well, I'd rather just get it from Canada, right? Because remember, you're going to have to raise it to cover your costs. Your $100 billion you just invested. Those costs have to be covered in the sale of your oil that you just got. So you might have to sell it for 70, let's just say a barrel. I'm just picking a simple number. When Canada's selling it for 65 a barrel. And they can lower their price a little bit because they didn't just invest $100 billion in new infrastructure. So you have to look at big picture here. Is it really profitable to start pumping that oil because you now have to sell it for a price that is you can get your profits back, right?
And here's going to go down there. It's beyond reason. Like, it is one of the most ludicrous things I've ever heard. Another example of Donald Trump meddling in the global oil market. The last time he meddled in the global oil market, we got handed the OPEC 2020 deal.
Yeah, that was bad.
Probably the worst deal ever in history. Except for maybe Seward's Folly, the Alaska deal. But the OPEC 2020 deal, probably one of the worst deals in history. It's right up there with Seward's Folly.
Okay.
So if we went there for the oil, which I believe we did, that was...
Not all Venezuelan oil is dirty. Only 80% is. Okay, then why would we... If it's not dirty oil, I think you mean heavy oil. So if it's medium or light oil, why wouldn't you just get the light oil from the United States? Like, why would I go to Venezuela to get the light oil when I can just get it from a place that already pumps it out, like of the United States, which is more stable? Why would the United States get light oil from Venezuela when it already has light oil in the United States? Yeah, we're no longer, and I thought we were going to be paying a giant private road for Alaska oil. Yeah, we're not doing that either.
You're going to see.
Yeah, we're not even doing Alaska oil. We're not even doing Alaska oil. Nobody put bids in for the Alaska oil.
See how this plays out. You're going to see over the coming months and years how this plays out, and you're going to be like, man, that guy was right. That Mr. Global guy. I think we took the country.
Who's going there to protect the oil? Good question. That's a good question. Why do we need this oil when we all have the Elon EVs for everyone? Well, I'm not buying an Elon.
Because Donald Trump wanted to say he took the country, and because Donald Trump wanted to show force, he wanted to show strength. Oh, and also, it's a distraction from the Epstein files.
Have I watched Landman? No, I have a Landman in here someplace. He's my Landman show. I don't watch Landman.
Whatever else.
And remember...
Is this getting me any closer to the $7,000 the administration owes me?
No, not at all. Sage is coping extra hard on this one. What am I coping with? I'm saying the same thing he's saying. Are we both coping together? So all of the experts and the oil companies were all coping together because the oil companies are also saying this, and the oil experts are also saying this. So I guess I'm coping with the oil experts. I'm okay with that. Yeah. If me and the oil experts are all coping together because we all kind of feel the same thing, I'm okay with that. Don't you think? I think that's a good thing, right? Like, if I'm coping with geniuses, I'd be okay with that, right? If I was on the same page as a large thing of brain surgeons, I think I'd be okay with that. When you're coping with the experts, I don't think that's coping, right?
Hard to say how this is going to impact global oil markets when they open.
You're welcome. Call in and explain to me where I'm wrong, but you never do.
Because this isn't really removing oil from the markets globally. And traders act much differently under the Trump presidency than they have past administrations.
Well, I mean, let's see. I mean, if we can easily see if it was a big deal in the oil, then the oil markets would show it in the price. Oh, year to date not available. Good point. Because it just started the year. Looks like I mean, if oil prices drop, then U.S. oil doesn't drill. Right? We don't drill as much. We lay rigs down. Like, if they're not going to make a profit, oil companies don't drill oil. I guess that's coping with reality, maybe.
People on Wall Street today have to see it to believe it before you see much movement in the market. It's not like the old days where if something happened around the world, oil would jump by $10. That doesn't happen anymore. And that's because traders are keen to the fact that so much of what we see now is honestly just a bunch of BS. I think we could see maybe a temporary jump in oil prices, maybe last for a day or two.
I mean, I think a lot of people don't understand that it's not always good for oil prices to drop down so much that rigging companies go bankrupt. That's not a good thing. Because then when so many rigging companies go bankrupt and you have less rigging companies, when oil prices go up, the gas prices go up also. So you want oil to be stable, a nice stable number, $60, $70 a barrel, and then we pay a stable price for gasoline. You don't want big ups and downs in the oil market because then rigging companies go out of business and they lay rigs down and they go bankrupt. And then if things were to kick off, then it becomes more expensive for oil because there's less rigging companies out there. You know what I'm saying?
We may not even see that. I would really be shocked if the market reacts much to it at all. Some people are making wild predictions. I think something else has to happen. I think there would have to be a response from an Iran or a Russia to see any real change in oil markets come Monday morning. So I'm sure I'm going to be talking about this more in the coming days and weeks as this develops. But, another thing, this could be a very poorly carried out idea of some way for Trump to use this as leverage against Canada, because we know how that relationship goes. It's not going to work.
Yeah, that's not going to work.
Because, Donald Trump thinks that if Venezuela could produce a lot of oil, he could use that as leverage against Canada in trade negotiations. A lot of people also think it has something to do with the petrodollar. It doesn't. It doesn't have anything to do with the petrodollar. So, what do we learn today?
I got it.
G.
Hi, thank you for calling the Sage Outcast Show. How may I indirectly direct your call?
Send a voicemail. Press 2.
Oh. Hi, thank you for calling the Sage Outcast Show. How may I indirectly direct your call?
Hey, what's going on? China was getting...
That's Goldfish. I don't take calls from Goldfish. That's Goldfish. I don't take calls from Goldfish.
We're not going to see a bunch of oil produced in Venezuela. That's not a thing. Let me know what you think in the comments section. Really appreciate my new followers and subscribers. Please like and share. Sounds like I'm losing.
Yes, so that was Goldfish just called in. Goldfish was, he's extremely racist, to be completely honest. I don't entertain his thoughts because of that. Just so you know.
The biggest concern I have is that if people are supportive of Trump and encouraging of Trump, he's just going to do it more. He's just going to topple more governments, invade more countries, steal more natural resources for himself. This is not a conspiracy. This is what he's telling the American people on Fox News.
But we can't take a chance after having done this incredible thing last night of letting somebody else take over, where we have to do it again. We can do it again, too. Nobody can stop us. There's nobody that has to...
I mean, yeah, anybody else is welcome to call in. The problem that Goldfish is, and I recognize this, and I've told him not to call anymore. I don't want to talk. I'm not going to talk to him anymore. He's majorly racist, and every time he calls in, he says that stuff, and I'm just not going to deal with it anymore. It's just not worth my time. So it's easier for me just to hang up on him, and I just basically block his number. So anybody else can call in.
Capability that we have.
This incredible thing last night. We have to do it again in other countries. We can do it again too. Nobody can stop us. That is the language of a dictator who plans on killing a lot more people.
I missed that.
The
Hang on.
American people on Fox News.
But we can't take a chance after having done this incredible thing last night of letting somebody else take over where we have to do it again. We can do it again, too. Nobody can stop us. There's nobody that has the capability that we have.
This incredible thing last night. We have to do it again in other countries. We can do it again, too. Nobody can stop us. That is the language of a dictator who plans on killing a lot more people. This is Marco Rubio on Meet the Press. The reporter asks,
I just think that we have a problem, and maybe I'm crazy, but I think that when it comes to interacting with trade deals with other countries and interacting with logistically with other countries, right, and having any of that, if you're out there basically invading other countries, if you're out there saying you're going to take over countries like Cuba and you're going to take over countries like Greenland and things like that, where does that place you with? I mean, some of these countries are going to basically say, yeah, we don't condone this behavior. Like, we don't support any of this. Like, just taking over and doing regime change is something that we said we wouldn't do. Most of the time when you have actual good trade deals and stuff, is not just saying you're going to take a country over and just run them. It's when you say, hey, we're willing to work with your country and we're willing to, that negotiation, the art of the deal type situation, that builds actual trust, that builds relationships, and that kind of supports a better trade and a better logistical economy for all of us here. But if we're just going to go over and start taking over other countries, I'm not exactly sure how that benefits America, because that seems to benefit the other country if we're eventually going to go down there and start build manufacturing down there. I mean, think about this. If we go in there and we're going to say, hey, we have rare earth minerals in Greenland. Now, we have rare earth minerals in the United States too, but we have rare earth minerals in Greenland. Rather than doing them here, we're going to go down to, or not down, it'll be up. We're going to go up to Greenland and we're going to take that. Hang on a second.
Colorado.
How's it going, brother? What you got? Can you hear me? Hey, Breaker 19, you got it on?
No.
You there? I don't know what happened on that one. I know I pushed the button because I did hear him for a second, but I think it was him because he tried calling. Anyways, I don't know. I just don't see it. I don't see it. I don't. Like I said, I don't think this is. I think it's a bad deal in regards to how it looks on the political stage, and in regards to other things that we could have did. Let's see if this works this time. Hang on, we're trying to get this call to go through.
Bert, Colorado.
Hey, can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can
Okay, what
hear
you got?
now. No, we just got done holidaying down in Oklahoma with our family and friends, as I was saying in the comments.
Mm-hmm.
And my nephew's fiance lives in Texas, and she's getting a lot of work down there in Amarillo.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, nobody's working in Texas or Oklahoma. No, none of the oil workers are.
I saw another video on that. That's a good. Hang on, Mr. I thought this was interesting too because, hang on. Well, Justin, how busy are you? I don't know, Justin, you in here? You're muted, Justin. You're muted.
I'm so busy. I got a call last night at 11:30 to go out and pull out a fucking water truck that got stuck.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Well, it wasn't the driver's fault, so it wasn't really a bad thing, at least on him.
Wasn't a bad thing? Oh, damn. Normally your drivers are kind of goofy and they turn around in spots that it's like, what were you guys thinking?
No, this was a bad turn. It was kind of sandy, but it was a 4-way dirt road, and the left and the right turn were staggered with with a big berm of sand on both sides. So he was kind of screwed either way, no matter what he did.
Well, how busy are you guys for oil? You guys slow down? You've been a little slower. I would have to say that.
Well, I mean, we've been slow here the past week or so, just because of the holidays. It'll start picking up again here.
They say there are no holidays.
Middle of the week.
I'd have to find that video. I think it was on TikTok. And I think I don't think it's on YouTube. Anyways, what else you got, Bert? Sorry about that.
That's okay. Yeah, we were driving through Amarillo that goes up here to Colorado through the arm of Oklahoma, and all you see is a thing that Donald Trump hates the most. Windmills from Woodward, Oklahoma, all the way to Colorado from, where Lowen Boebert, where he vetoed all of that water. People are very, very upset right now at Donald Trump. And we went down there, we didn't see that one sign for Donald Trump at all. Because usually when we go down there during the holidays, you can see Trump signs, Trump flags. We did not see one thing going down there. Through Colorado, through the arm of Oklahoma, going down to Amarillo, we didn't see not one thing. So, yeah, I think this is going to happen real soon. I think we're going to have a very strong midterms, especially down in the eastern part of Colorado where he vetoed Lowen Boebert's Clearwater. Yeah, people are very upset down there. Lamar, Kit Carson, and things like that. I just wanted to say that real quick. But, yeah, my nephew and his fiancée is saying they might have to go down to where her family is in Texas to get work. That's just crazy talk.
True.
Anyways, well, that was my minute. Thanks, Sage.
Yeah, thank you, brother. Yes, windmills are killing the eagles, especially the ones disguised as falcons. Okay, here's the one right here.
See all those buildings behind me?
Hang on, here we go.
Pecos, Texas.
Pecos, Texas.
See all those buildings behind me? Look how empty it is.
So that gentleman's name is the Oilfield Dad, I believe, and he's at a man camp in Pecos, Texas, simply showing everyone how empty it is.
Yeah, Pecos is about 2.5 hours west of here.
2.5 hours? Okay.
Right, there's a lot of people in the comments section saying, oh, it's the end of the year, it's the holidays. I don't know what you people do in the oil field. You're obviously non-essential. But the oil field that I spent 34 years in don't give a shit about the end of the year or the holidays.
True.
Unless it's really slow.
Yeah, it's either booming or it's slow.
Unless it's really bad times. Yeah, ain't nobody drilling wells or completing wells getting time off because it's the end of the year or because it's the holiday. That's not a thing. I mean, literally the only people I think it would slow down is maybe salespeople. And they are the most non-essential people on the planet.
Yeah, oil kind of sells itself.
The people that do the work are still working. So the EIA recently put this out. You see that right there? That is production dropping in the Permian for the first time since COVID. And only the second time since the beginning of the shale revolution. So around 2010 or 11. We've lost roughly 80 rigs that are drilling for oil, and we've lost 56 or 7 frac spreads. And the vast majority of that is all in the Permian Basin. If you're in the business and someone tells you it slows down at the end of the year or for the holidays, just disregard anything else they say. Seriously. Thanks.
Pecos, Texas.
Yeah. Hang on. Anyways, that's just pretty much it. So no other calls other than goldfish. Poor goldfish. All right. That being said, I'm gonna go ahead and jump out of here. I will be back tomorrow. Tomorrow will be I have a show planned tomorrow. Just so you guys know. But logistically speaking, I'm 99%. Do me a favor, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, share this out. I'm putting some stuff together to try to create more research style shows. So, but I got a plan for tomorrow. I do have a plan for tomorrow. I hope I have a plan for tomorrow. I should have a plan for tomorrow, as long as I get my info. That being said, I'm out.
Hello, Sage. This is Cody. Or how? Wait a minute.
Cody who?
Is my name Cody or Colby?
I don't know.
I'm not really sure. So I will.
Yeah.
There, in fact.
Okay.
Internally.
Right.
Hang on a second. God damn it. I'm trying to... Wait a minute. I think your name might be Soli. I don't fucking know what your goddamn real name is.
Nobody does.
All right, give me a call back.
I can't come up with that word.
Wait
The
a minute.
conversions